Hey, welcome back to Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. I'm Alex, host of this quaint, silly, fun little podcast that I do. Sometimes it feels like I'm just talking to myself, but that's okay. I guess that's what a podcast kind of is sometimes. Today we're talking about a very interesting conversation that I've been looking forward to, and I've been trying to find a reason and an avenue and a person to talk about with, and that's the concept, the idea, the notion of abstract art. What is abstract art? How do you define abstract art? I think it's something that I feel like a lot of first-time museum goers kind of have to confront and have to rationalize, and they either love it or hate it, or are very indifferent about it, or have no opinion at all. And that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. The first time I ever went to a museum, like in a tangible way, was in high school. I've talked about it a lot on the show, but when I was in the French club in high school, we would do 2 trips every season. We'd go to the Met and we'd go to the MoMA. And the MoMA was always in the fall. So when I joined the French club, the first trip that I went to was to the MoMA. And so, you start at the top floor and you see Starry Night and you see the Picassos and you work your way down, and then you're kind of just witnessing a lot of weird stuff. And you kind of just got to accept it and go with the flow. And I think it was that exposure, that really allowed me to be open to abstraction in a really tangible and exciting and unique way. And I'm not even talking about abstraction in the sense of like Pollock or Rothko, like truly strange performance pieces, sculptural work. I think of works like, I don't know where it's on view, but if you're just like that robot that like is like cleaning up its own oil, that's like a really unique thing that like maybe abstraction is not the right word, but alas, it still makes you think. And I think a lot of people might point at it and go, is that really art? And I think that's kind of the tangible question that needs solving when talking about, whether it's sculptural work, whether it's abstraction, like we're going to dive into, whether it's fiber art, it's all up for interpretation and debate and conversation. And that's why I'm joined by my dear friend, beloved. I guess I could say we're colleagues.
Yeah, I love it. Beloved. Hello.
And
thank you.
Yeah, this is Katie Truk.
Hi, Alex.
How are you?
Thank you for having me. Super fun.
Thanks for being on the show.
I
appreciate it.
What a delight. What a delight.
So, Katie.
Do it.
For people that don't know who you are.
Okay.
Tell the world.
A quick thing?
As quick as you want to be.
Katie Truk. I make artwork out of pantyhose, basically. I have been practicing for well over 20 years. Oh my God, where did the time go? And I also teach, and I critique, and I consult, and all that jazz. But yes, I've been working with pantyhose for a very long time and try to make, as you were saying, abstract, but truly 3-dimensional sculptures. And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
That's it. Does that make me qualified to even have this conversation, Alex?
I think it does. I think you're more qualified than I'll ever be.
Well,
and I think that's
when you
fair.
turn 60, we'll have this conversation again if I'm still alive, and you can be like, I'm very qualified, Katie.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many people. Yes, I'm learned beyond learned. Yes, yes.
So I guess for the uninformed, for the uninitiated, for the non-believers out there, what is abstract art, if you can even boil it down?
This is the tough part. You can't even define art. What is art?
That's
right?
Fair. You're
what
right.
is
That's
art?
Fair. Yeah.
Art is whenever you put a label to it. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Right? So abstract art, I try to think of, it's the one thing that you don't recognize anything in it. That's how I describe it to people. That is abstraction, because when you look at it, your brain has to be like, I don't know, I think there's like a fight or flight thing where you try to recognize things in it. You're like, oh, well, I see a butterfly. Or, oh, but when you really look at it, there's no representation there. No true representation. To me, that is abstraction.
Yeah.
Right. When you have blobs of color, but in the middle, there's like a dragonfly, I don't call that abstraction. That is something that's more narrative to me, because you have an actual subject matter. So it has to be subject free. To me, that is what abstraction is. Somebody else, you could ask 1,000 different people and they would have a different idea of what abstraction is.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what it is. It's the lack of any true narrative, blatant narrative. How's that?
I think it's wonderful. And now I have a million questions and I don't know where to go. Okay. So I'm familiar with your artwork.
Mm.
And for listeners, if you're unaware of what it is that Katie makes, you can go on our YouTube channel. We did a profile on Katie where you can see her at work and examples of her work.
Thank you.
If you've come to Art Uncorked in the past, which we're rebranding this year to now Art on Tap,
Ooh la la.
Katie's work's been up for auction there, and
Thank you.
you know, she's fantastic, and there's a reason why
Thank you.
we hang out and get coffee, and I have you on the show.
That's just because I just love your aura, baby. Your energy is fabulous.
But essentially, like, I think I have an idea of this because we've talked a lot, but you know, I know I have attached you to this idea of abstraction, but do you even define yourself as an abstract artist?
I try not to define myself as anything, quite honestly.
That's fair.
Product of the 90s, right? Generation X. We used to be like, we want the work to stand for itself.
Totally. Yeah.
We don't want to put a label on it. We don't want to put a sex to it. We don't want to put a person to it even. We want the work to stand for itself. At least that's what I'm speaking for myself and what I learned when I was in school.
Yeah.
So now everybody's like, no. This artwork is great because of this person and who they are, instead of looking at the artwork. And it's kind of reversing now. Now it's about identity and less about the artwork for itself, if that makes any sense to you. So I just go, hey, I make artwork out of pantyhose. Like it or leave it, babe. That's it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And if you like it, cool. If you don't, fine.
Yeah.
I'm still going to make it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know that the work that you do does have meaning, and it does have a history that you've kind of woven into it. But obviously people are going to, when they look at a work of abstraction, or in your case, you know, your pantyhose,
right,
there's going to be something that they're trying to pull from it. They're going to try and seek some sort of semblance of a reason or an answer or meaning.
Yes.
And despite those works having meaning, I imagine A, you're not going to tell them, and B, do you even want to hear what people have to think as an abstract, like as a creator of abstraction, or
yes.
you do love it?
I do. I like hearing what I think it was Seal. Do you ever listen to a Seal song? Puts the rose on the thing on the grave. You know that one?
Yes,
you know what I'm talking about?
Okay, yeah.
You never know what that man is talking about. I'm like, what is he singing? I have no idea. And he never wanted anybody to know his lyrics because he wanted you to figure out what the lyrics are for yourself, whatever you're singing. And I kind of believe in that. Because, for example, I was selling a piece of artwork and I had a blah, blah, blah series, and there was something called lift service. And to me, it was all about blowing smoke up with somebody's hoo-ha. All right.
Yeah.
And this one person's like, oh my gosh, I love it. It's like X's and O's. It's like, it just feels like the love. And I was like, yeah, that's not it. That's not it at all. But I'm not about to tell them that, because if they're going to take it home, they have to love it for themselves instead of realizing that to me, it had a negative connotation instead of positive.
Yeah.
But I just want to digress for 1 second.
Take
that's
this
okay
wherever
with
you want to go. Absolutely.
I feel as though people look at artwork present. Like, it's very different to look at my artwork online than it is to be physically present. And in this digital age of AI, I find that as much people are worried about not, that no one's going to create anymore, everything's going to be online now. I think there's something really important about being in front of, which is why people still do it. How many people visit the Mona Lisa? All the time, because there's an energy that comes from every single piece when you're present with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely true. Even with my pieces, you can look at it online. You're not going to get the same vibe if you're physically in front of it, enjoying the shadows. And I think that's true for any artwork. You have to be physically present to feel the energy that artist put in the artwork that you're never going to get through your computer.
Yeah. And so I guess that leads me to kind of wondering. So I know recently you did a print series, correct, of the works?
It was.
So how does that translate in the course of like needing to see the like tangibly understand what you're looking at, but now you're taking this 3-dimensional work into a 2-dimensional space that's not digital. It's still tangible, but it's still not the direct translation of what your art is. Like, how do you, I guess, like reconcile with that, if that makes sense?
I know, right? I find them as exercises.
Okay.
So it's a lot. I always say that I hate painters because they can crank out their work faster than I can, because if I don't like a color, I have to take it completely apart and re-sew it by hand. Not saying that painters aren't talented and that they don't, but if they're like, this needs yellow, there it is, it's yellow, whereas I'm like, oh no, this green's all wrong. So by taking it to 2 dimensions, I'm losing the shadow. I'm losing the light. I have to physically create that using colors and tones and all that jazz. But it's easier for me to crank out something. Zip, 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 zip. So there you go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that, because, obviously every artist's art is different. Every artist's experience is different. Every artist's way that they look at the world and their art within the context of the world is different. But do you think that the battle that you face creating something that isn't you're not doing, a landscape, you're not painting a portrait, you're creating this almost amorphous sort of alternate universe in a way? Like, I feel like when I'm looking at your work, sometimes it's like I'm looking into like a black hole of color and powder and fun. And, it's one of those things that, like, the way that you just described to me about like your battle of, it's not as simple as just repainting.
Right.
Do you think that a lot of other, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of other, artists who create in this realm and in this genre, if you will, are facing those similar battles? Or do you think it's uniquely your own battle to fight?
It's one thing to look at something out the window and try to recapture it. I find that a lot of abstract artists, it's either about process, like they're enjoying the fact that they're being repetitious, or it's about creating something that they haven't seen in the world. Yeah. And that to me is what it's about. So, or trying to emulate it in a different way. Like, I know you didn't want to talk about Pollock, but we're just going to talk about Pollock for a second.
That's fine.
Pollock was trying to recreate, I guess there was a tribe, I want to say, I don't know if it was Mexican or if it was Native American, but they would do drip paintings in that way. And he was just kind of trying to emulate it, because I believe he was from the South. Don't quote me. My brain doesn't have enough coffee in it.
All good.
But so it's taking that and kind of trying to put something new into the world. So I think that some people, when they're abstraction, is it emoting? It's about, is it a process, or is it, again, about something just new? What's new? For me, it was about putting something new in the world that I had never seen. I wanted to challenge myself to be like, hey, this person does this painting and they do it really well. This person does marble. Wow, it's really good. I can't compete with that at all. What can I create that's going to be purely mine? And that's why I turned to pantyhose. So I think that, that's that goal of like, can we do something new? What can I do? Do you believe abstractly, because I think of abstract, like in this way, that there's a energy mentally, they talk about this sometimes, that everybody's kind of tapping into. And some people just kind of have that vibe first versus, I think of, okay, I want a duvet. I really want a zebra duvet, and I don't have one, but all of a sudden, boom, like a year later, suddenly everywhere is zebra duvets. Do you believe that there's an energy that we're all tapping into?
You're asking me?
I am.
Okay. So I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
But I need to ruminate for a moment.
All right, do it.
I think that manifesting. Let's start there.
Okay.
I don't know if I believe in manifesting necessarily. I think that I can't say it's not real and it's not this thing that can be tapped into and harnessed.
Can you define what you're manifesting? You believe what manifesting is for my brain.
So I believe that manifesting is when you are, whether it's conscious or unconscious, you're desiring something, whether that is a job or a experience or something, anything,
okay.
Whether that is physical or kind of undescribable.
A deliberate thought.
A deliberate thought, exactly.
Okay.
And you will that into the world with, conscious or I think also unconscious effort. And I'm not going to declare that that's not true, because I think everyone has a different experience with the universe and the world and how they interact with it and wish for things. But I've noticed in my life there are things that I can't ignore that I wouldn't ever say I sat there and said, I want this to happen. I want this to happen. I want this to happen. But when I roll back kind of the Rolodex of memories, and I think about what happened in my life that I can connect it to something else. And I can connect it to a moment where I went, oh, that's always been meant to happen. That was that was always going to happen. Fated, sure, if you will. And that's both good and bad, you know. I think back to, you know, my cancer diagnosis, for example.
Right.
When I was, for the audience that hasn't listened to all these episodes and might not have heard this, I'm a testicular cancer survivor. I was diagnosed at 18. I'm survived and happy and good and beyond my battle, and all is well. So let's just get that off our shoulders. But in regards to that diagnosis, when I was probably 13 or 14, New Egypt, where I grew up, has a very high cancer rate. There's a lot of cancer in my town, and Relay for Life was a very big deal. And I have a very distinct memory of being at Relay for Life just as a participant, a part of a team, because it was a very big deal. And they would have the ceremony where they'd give the survivors that attended their little medals, and they'd do their lap. And I remember sitting in that crowd at 13 or 14, and I heard for the first time in my life testicular cancer. Wow. And it really stuck with me in like a tangible, freaky way. And I kept thinking about it. And embarrassingly, and I say this with a lot of, you know, I don't know if I would say remorse, but, you know, I've had to sit with it for a long time. I remember as a 13-year-old going, man, I would never feel comfortable telling somebody that I had testicular cancer. How embarrassing is that?
Wow.
And then at 18, there I was getting a very serious diagnosis of testicular cancer. And in that moment when I heard the words, "you have cancer," I thought back to that moment when I was 13. Wow. And when I probably said that at 13, I didn't mean it maliciously, and I didn't mean it with ill intent. It was just as a tween, it was like how you can't talk about anything, let alone talking about your body and what's wrong with your body.
Yes.
And so it was just like in that moment, the masculinity that was guarding the ability to speak openly about my health, whether that's physical or mental, was impossible to consciously understand. And I've had that experience beyond just awful things like cancer. I've had that experience with museums and where I got to today. Like when I joined the French Club and I started going to museums, when I got my job here, I immediately was able to connect it back to my time in high school and going, oh, that was the moment where this was kind of set in motion. Wow. And so that's my long-winded way of saying, I think that maybe you're right that there is this frequency that we can tap into.
Yes.
But I don't know if it's exactly what you're talking about. And I don't know if it's necessarily what I truly believe in.
Right.
But it would be impossible for me to say that I don't at least have a willingness to accept that could be a reality. Does that answer the question?
It was awesome. I loved it.
It
was a little different than what I was expecting, but I totally dig it. It was awesome.
All right. I'm glad.
I do believe that sometimes there are karmic hurdles, and I'll get back to my point because yours was awesome. And I do believe that if you can recognize that point, like I remember the first time I went to Grounds for Sculpture, and I remember walking through the studios and I was like, I'm going to have a studio here someday.
For context, you do.
I do now, which I was like, yeah. I mean, like there's something that at Grounds for Sculpture that was always calling to me. Every time I was there, it just felt like home. And I was like, I'm meant to be here, and I don't know what capacity. So I feel that. But for me, I want to talk more about the collective energy. So have you ever seen something and then before you know it, for example, I used to make jewelry. Mm-hmm. And I used to make it out of ceramics, and I did this shape. Even when I draw, I still make this shape. It's like circles and circles. They almost look like olives, like with a little pit kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I find now that I'm aware of that, it's almost like when you see that car and you're driving on the road, all of a sudden, like, what was it? Punch buggy or whatever. All of a sudden you see them everywhere. The color's silver. Suddenly it's everywhere. There's that kind of thing where you're like, this shape, now I see it so often on continents that is still being that people make. There's something collectively shared there. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes abstraction, they talk about that tapping into, you and I will have a shared experience, even though we're not in the same room, through the color usage, through our brush strokes, through that. So you then unfortunately will be later, you're like this person, you can't help it because there's something collectively that we share energy wise way somewhere else. Da, 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 da. But yes, you don't believe in manifestation? I find that really.
Well, I think I just contradicted myself in my own answer.
I think it's different. I think that, there's somebody said that there's the book, The Secret, where they're like, I want it to be $1 million, $1 million. That's totally different than you being like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to deal that, or I did it, or something like that.
Yeah, I think my belief in manifestation is not conscious. I think it's unconscious. I think that there are moments that I experience something profound and I know the moment that it sticks with me. And then it's kind of like, when's the other shoe going to drop? Because even if I maybe forget it an hour, 2 hours later, 3 hours later, years go by, the second that the connecting happens, I go, that was the moment.
But have you ever met anybody that all of a sudden came into your life like unexpectedly? Like, I think we're talking about something different than abstraction now.
Yeah.
But where you're having a moment and all of a sudden you meet somebody who can either share that experience that will help you and guide you, or yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I think we shared that moment in a weird way with testicular cancer.
Yes.
I think
Crazy.
I don't know if you were alluding to that, but that's the only thing I can think of in this moment is that, so what I learned about you after we had met, after I'd spent hours with you in your studio, after we had already created this bond.
Yes.
I was doing further research for, I think for the write-up. Essentially for the description. And I stumbled across the fact that some of your early work was based around reeling with a testicular cancer diagnosis that was close to you.
Yeah.
And creating art out of eggs and stuff. And it was just this moment where like we had this deep connection that I think spurred a really strong friendship. And then after the fact to realize that we also shared this really unique and really underrepresented sort of disease was profound. And I think cemented the connection that we did have in the studio that day.
True.
And I think so I think that that kind of thread does connect.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Because I've had situations where I have, I totally, I mean, for you, I still can't believe how young you were. I was like, it's mind boggling because I'm a part of that series was about my next door neighbor who was trying to get pregnant and they were having trouble. And I was just like, oh my God. And, I was in my early 20s. So, I mean, the fact that you're 18, I can't even imagine. So like, it's still like, wow. But I've had moments where, I have really bad asthma and I had to put up a show and I'm looking at my phone and who can I call? And all of a sudden the phone rings in your hand and it's like, hey, I had the day off. I just figured to see what's up with you. And you're like, whoa, I could totally use your help right now. Those are kind of the moments that I'm referring to where it's that person comes into your life exactly when you needed them. That idea comes exactly when, it's like that inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, right. Meant to be. Yeah. We're way off target.
But I don't mind.
Okay.
That's fine. That's
right.
okay. We're good.
Sweet.
I guess bringing us back around, even though I'm leaving all of this in, how do you, sorry.
I was going to say, with your museum and the way that you talk about it, I mean, do you feel as though the things in France, that was fated for your journey here? Do you feel like that really, I mean, you talk about it often, so it's very profound in your life to be where you are now.
Yeah, I think, going to those museums, I think it opened up something for me in a way that I didn't quite understand. I think that at first glance, going and visiting museums and having the guidance of my French teacher, also my track coach, who kind of essentially walked me around these galleries for the first time and provided me with that insight. I mean, going back even farther, my grandmother from a very early age was well traveled and loved art and did a really pointed job at being like, okay, I'm going to France and I'm going to go visit Monet's gardens, and this is Claude Monet, and here is this painting that is hanging in this print that is hanging in your house that he painted. And then I show up in the Met and the painting that's been on my dining room wall my whole childhood is right in front of me. And
How did it make you feel when you saw it the first time?
dissonant,
face to face?
dissonant.
Really?
I mean, like, not like, I know dissonance like a negative thing, but like it feels out of body.
Okay.
And it feels strange, and it feels like it feels like deja vu in a way, I guess.
Okay.
But it's profound, and it's exciting, and it's special, and I think it's in moments like that when I turn around 3 or 4 or 5 years later, and I'm now walking into MAM for the first time as an employee, even if I was an intern,
right.
there was something, I would say justifying in that, and something deeply, I keep saying profound, but like, I don't know, like something like there was a connection there.
Do you find that before you went to the museums, I don't know if you had a lot of art history. It sounds like grandma might have been
minimal, but
okay. So when you looked, was there any artwork that you saw beforehand that you're like, well, I could have done that, or it was versus this is why this picture is important, or this is why this painting is here. It's because of this and this. Do you find that? Did you ever have that kind of reaction?
I don't want to say I never said, oh, that's just blue paint on a canvas. Who can't do that?
Right.
I now know that that's an ignorant statement, and I'm not going to pretend like I didn't maybe say that at one point in time, but I don't believe that to be true. That to be true that I could do it.
Okay.
But I think back to being in elementary school, and you have your specials, and art was one of our specials, right. And I remember my art teacher in elementary school adored George O'Keeffe.
I can't believe you can even remember elementary school art.
It's weird, but I mean, but like think about the string of connection where it's like, yes. I'm not an artist in the sense of painting or anything like that. Like I just, I write and whatever, right. But I filmmaking, sure, yes. But like in the traditional sense, like I can't draw or paint to save my life.
Okay.
And so the fact that I have all of these memories about art at such a young age is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember distinctly Mrs. Williams' class, she really loved George O'Keeffe. And so I remember distinctly as a kid, like she would have us drawing and painting skulls and like emulating George O'Keeffe and like learning about her life in a way that like I don't think other schools or kids really did that probably at 3rd grade or 4th grade.
I made an ashtray for my dad.
Yeah. And so like, when I, it hasn't been on view in my time at MAM, but like coming here and realizing, oh, we have a George O'Keeffe in our collection. That's really cool. Or, things like that, I guess sometimes spur, but yeah.
Because I find that is the one hurdle when it comes to abstraction, period, is that everybody goes, I could do that, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You didn't.
Do you think the same goes for like ready-mades?
That's a really good question. I'm going to say yes, because to them, I think a lot of people think it's computer made, or prints, it's been, you've done it so many times, it loses its originality. I don't think people understand process as much because of the education in schools.
Yeah.
So I think that is also, a huge, huge hurdle. I was very thankful that my mom was really important. She really pushed the arts.
Yeah.
And she really pushed like, oh, no. It's not just about that. So I've always grown up being like, well, it's just white. And she'd be like, no, okay, this is something, it's white because there was no white paint or there's no brush strokes or and look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And so that was really important. And I think that is sometimes crucial when it comes to understanding abstraction. If you look at it, you're like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
White on white, 3 lines. Somebody tell me what's going on.
Were your family artists in any
My mom
sense?
was a photographer.
Okay.
She now no longer, she still dabbles, but as soon as it turned to digital, she was like, kind of like, I can't keep up with the programming.
Yeah.
No.
And do you think that's why she was so
Yes.
pointed about being like everything is art?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And my dad majored in the business of philosophy. I tried to read his thesis paper and it had like 1 period in it. I was like, what's happening?
That's
so
awesome.
He was very cerebral. So he would be for him, it was being respectful and also, let's stop and think about this.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom's like, appreciate, where my dad would be like, think about it.
Yeah.
And
That's a good mix. That's a
was,
healthy combo.
It was great.
I think for me, the reason why abstraction is something that I feel I gravitate towards, and I think I was able to accept at such an early point in my experience going to museums, when I went to the MoMA for that first time, was because I grew up. I mean, obviously, I was taking in the whatever my grandmother was teaching me, or my art teacher was teaching me about Georgia O'Keeffe or whatever. But I had this. I had this exposure to different forms of art, different mediums of art. And I think that's why in this show I try to highlight the intersection between fine art and fashion, fine art and film, fine art and storytelling, because it's all art. And so like I grew up in a family of dancers. Like my mother, my sister, my grandmother, my cousins, they were all dancers. And, my dad's a goldsmith and a jeweler. And my grandfather was a big band leader, and so I grew up around the arts, but not in the fine arts definition of what art is. And so for me to accept abstraction, I think was a little bit more tangible, if that makes sense.
But when you were, since you're surrounded by so many dancers, are there any modern dancers? I mean, are they traditional ballerina, tap dancing?
Yeah,
jazz?
tap. It was mostly jazz, tap, and ballet.
When you see your first, I think of, oh my gosh, who's the one who does with all the material? Why is my brain not even thinking? It'll come to me later.
That's all right.
I find that when you first see a modern dance, even a lot of people are like, "What is this?"
No, absolutely. Yeah. I really enjoyed it at Montclair State. I had a friend that was in the dance BFA program, and I would go and see her shows, and I loved them. I loved it so much because it was fresh and different and interesting, and made you think in a way that going to a recital growing up didn't make you think.
Right.
Well,
I think
it's not to say that I think that's disrespectful to the artwork on view there, but it's still profound and interesting. And I don't mean to insult my mother, who choreographed a lot of those dances.
Age helps.
Yeah.
And you're probably bored. You're like, I'm bored. Yeah. There's a difference. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I get it.
I think it's really interesting and beautiful. And as much as I could stay on this topic all day long, I do want to kind of swing back and maybe shift the conversation a little bit. But I wanted to ask, because I sometimes tend to struggle when it comes to defining genres of art. And I think it's very easy, as I did probably ignorantly earlier, just horning and pigeonholing into abstraction, that everything that is not quite traditional or tangible is abstraction, and that is not the case.
Right.
For you, where are the definitions between, say, like abstraction or surrealism or expressionism or impressionism? Like where do those lines and boundaries kind of cross, or is there, in your school of thinking, is there no boundaries?
Unfortunately, when we start getting into all these little,
subcategory, whatever.
Subcategories, or and they are important, but it reminds me of religion, Catholicism versus Judaism versus Buddhism, versus and then when you get to Catholicism, there's Protestant, Presbyterian, there's so many little sects.
Yeah.
So each, I think, I feel as though we group them again. I always bring back to the fight or flight thing in my mind, because our brain needs to compartmentalize, to understand, to rationalize, and to have all these people doing the same thing, that collective thing that I was talking about, that collective energy. There's so many people are doing similar things. They're like, oh, you guys are in this category. But each have their own, and they all feed off each other. I always think of what Paris in the 1920s, everybody hung out. Everybody had their ideas.
Salvador Dali, Ernest Hemingway.
They were all there.
Fitzgerald.
Calder, they were all there, which I'm like, oh, can you imagine the conversations? Yeah. Or were they just getting blotto and being like, oh, I'll see you tomorrow, Jacques? We don't know.
Yeah.
I would love to be a fly on the wall if they had more women there, unfortunately. I always say, yeah, thanks, boys. But that's cool. But yeah, no, they all have their, for a reason. And I think that helps by putting them in those categories. It also kind of, you can see similarities, and that's what helps. Like surrealism, you're like, okay, this picture is a little dreamy. All right. Okay. Whereas like impressionists, you're like, oh, they're capturing light because of, was it photography came in, and they're like, how can we make images different than photography? Let's capture that light. So it's all about like, like your eyeballs and light and things like that. And so that's what makes all of them a little bit different. But what I find as an artist is, what if I don't want to be in that category? That to me is more we're categorizing all these dead people in ways maybe they don't want.
Yeah.
I think we've had this conversation where I always think of Kafka and Metamorphosis, and how everybody always says that the father's throwing apples at the worm because he's castrating them. And I always go, really? But what was that what he was thinking? And unfortunately, as much as it's important that we want you to think about things, that's why we're putting it out in the world, any kind of artwork, sometimes you can think of something that I'm like, oh, but that's not it. No. And what do you do then?
Yeah.
That's my question. How many people have been categorized something purely by, the collective energy that was going on, instead of really what they wanted to achieve? That's for me, it's kind of like, okay, Asheville Gorky, or all right, maybe they thought they were something else, like, oh, I thought I was in the same group as like Moreau, and they're like, no, but I'm making it. This is my way of doing them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of that's the things that as much as I love art historians and I find them really important, sometimes I feel as though they have to create things again just to write the book.
Yeah.
That's a terrible thing to say because I really do love them. However, I do, as an artist, I'm kind of like, again, when I hear people talk about my work, I want to be like, no, you're not getting it.
But you're not going to tell them what it is.
No, I find now that I'm an older person, right? I love that you brought that up. That I will be like, maybe it's the menopause talking, but I think it's really, nowadays I'm kind of like, all right, let's stop. And I rewrote my artist statement, which used to be the same for years, to be like, yes, it is about, I am a female. This is a truly female process for me. This is about the fact that I have been in a box as a woman for multiple, years of my life, obviously. So yes. And I put that in. And do I feel awful that I had to put that in? Yes. Would I rather you think about it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what else can you say?
Yeah. Well, Katie, I appreciate you dearly.
Oh, you're the best.
I thank you for coming on the show.
You're so talented.
This has been a long time in the making. I have one last question for you.
Do it.
So sometimes I have to walk people through the galleries, and I'm no docent. Okay. And there's things that I can talk about, and there's stories that I know, and I can kind of do my little pit stops. But sometimes you get to a work that I just can't quite explain. And maybe that's here, maybe that's at the Met, maybe that's the MoMA, National Gallery, Newport Art Museum, list the museums on and on and on and on, whatever. In the realm of abstract art, and it could be your own art, it could be an artist that you love, it could be one of the many artists we talked about, but how would you, as the artist, as the leading expert on this show between the two of us, if you had to do the docent tour, let's say, and you had to guide someone through learning how to look at a piece of abstract art, how would you do that? Or is there no succinct answer?
It really depends on where you want to, as a educator. Sometimes I have a point, and so I will purposely be like, okay, this is where I'm heading towards. I tend to talk about what was that artist going through in this period of their life. This painting is from this year. So let's talk about this year of their life. And maybe you can find the subject matter within it. Maybe you can find the subconscious that's racing through. Maybe you can figure that out, because that's what's going on there. Or maybe there's something really interesting or innovative that artist was doing. They're like, check this out. It had never been done this way, or that no one's ever used color or paint or texture or, in this way. And I want you to see this so that you can see something new that was put out in the world just at this time. And, maybe 1,000 people have done it since and you're like, so I've seen it, it's a crayon, but that at that moment, this was brand new and everybody went, wow, that's another way that I would take it.
Yeah.
So those are two things that I'd probably, push. Because it is amazing. Abstract, you don't realize, and I'm sure even with your writing, there's so many things that subconsciously you're filtering that you might not even realize till for like a year later that you're like, whoa, that's what that was about. And I think sometimes I think of there's a Van Gogh painting that they, my art history professor once flashed. It's like with the crows and it's dark and it's gloomy and it's like haystack. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
And they show it to you and they're like, oh, and then afterwards they're like, oh, he just shot himself right after he painted that picture. And you're like, oh my God.
Oh, great. Lovely.
Yeah. Like, and then when you look at it again, it has a deeper meaning. So sometimes having that story, I don't want it blatantly thrown out, but knowing that, he was deeply depressed. This was the year of his life. Let's just take a moment with this painting and try to feel his feels.
Yeah.
So those are two things that I would do.
Amazing. Katie Truk, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Where can people find you? Are you showing anywhere anytime soon? What's going on in the life of Katie?
That you were going to ask me that. I am in a collective show. It's called The Collective, Murmurations. It's going to be at the Center for Contemporary Arts in September. But you can find me at Grounds for Sculpture in my studio. You can find me at KTruk on Instagram and katietruk.com. Though I do need to work on that. The life of an artist is always so busy. There's never enough time in the day. So yes, these are the things that you can find me. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
A pleasure.
I'm sure this will not be the last.
Awesome.
This has been Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this episode. If you like what you heard, you can tune in every Wednesday at 10 a.m. when these air. Like I said, the last couple weeks, summers are a little weird and wonky because people are going on vacation. They're not really around. The galleries aren't fully open, so there's less to talk about. But this was a real episode, and I'm thrilled that we were able to bring it to you. Hopefully next week there will be a real episode as well, because I haven't planned that far in advance yet. We're working on it. With any luck, it'll be a real episode too. But like I said, this has been Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. I hope museums are for you. You can visit the Montclair Art Museum on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're open those days, and there's always public programming, workshops, classes, the whole nine. So come by, say hi.
It's air conditioned. What else is there to do?
That's true. It's
come
air conditioned.
Hello.
And tickets are half price right now.
Woo, baby.
It's a good deal.
And is there coffee?
There is on Fridays and Saturdays.
Stop.
Yeah, it's a good deal.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this episode, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.